Welcome to the Commissioner's Report. I'm Miles Vance. As you can see, this is a very special episode of the Commissioner's Report. We're here on location at Mosquito Control to talk about the methods, equipment, and gear used to combat mosquitoes here in Polk County. I'm here with District 5 Commissioner Michael Scott. Michael Scott, you ready to take a look?
Let's grab some fun.
All right, we're going to start off by taking a look at the helicopters. One of the most important aspects of mosquito control is keeping those skies clean, and this helicopter helps to do that job. I'm here with Mosquito Control Manager, Dr. Jackson Mosley. Dr. Mosley, how are you doing?
Great, how are you?
Doing good. Tell us a little bit about this machine behind us.
Okay, so this is an awesome piece of equipment. It's actually used to treat mosquitoes from the air. It can cover a lot of territory, a lot of acres in one night. So when we need to have big jobs done, this is the weapon to go to.
Now, you say at night. Is it always spraying at night?
Well, when we spray for adult mosquitoes, they're active at night, so we want to take advantage of when they're most active.
You see. And what sort of range does this helicopter cover?
Well, it really depends on the size of the job. We can refuel and go back up, and we can cover a lot of acres, thousands of acres a night.
And what does the spraying do in terms of cutting down on the mosquito population or treating them or whatever the case may be?
Well, when we go to treat for mosquitoes, our job is to knock down the adults. Okay, so if they're out and they're flying, we can treat them and we can kill the mosquitoes. That's the whole idea. We have this piece of equipment here, which is a spray bar. This is for adults. So we have two options. We can also treat for larvae, which are still in the water, or we can treat for adults that are flying. Our preference would be to treat for larvae that are still in the water, but once they get their wings, then we have to use our helicopter to help control. The trucks do a great job, but the helicopter covers a lot more territory.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Dr. Mosley, I know when I was flying around, and we'll talk about, we have a second helicopter too. I know this is one of two, but the second one that I flew in, we were talking about the bigger open areas that you guys are flying. I say open areas, meaning they're more water inundated, so you're looking at the mosquito population. Maybe it's next to a residential area, next to a park, but can you talk a bit about how the helicopter really helps us treat those areas that aren't really reachable by truck from what I saw from the air?
Precisely. So those areas are actually key areas for mosquitoes to develop. And so if we can find those areas, we can fly over and treat the larvae before they ever get their wings. So the advantage of having two helicopters is we can have one for adults and one for larvae. Reduces the time of changing the equipment and allows us to get out and get to work a lot faster.
And what does that efficiency mean for our residents?
It saves time, certainly saves money, because we have staff here not as long having to work and change the equipment. So there's a benefit. And also we can reduce mosquito populations.
Talk about saving taxpayer money. That second helicopter that we recently acquired, but I know that one was kind of a deal from another county in Florida. Can you tell us a bit about that one?
Yeah, that's a great point. One thing that we have with mosquito control, when another program increases their fleet and need to reduce their aircraft, they often reach out to other mosquito control programs. So they reached out, they had the perfect price with all the equipment. It was a deal that we couldn't pass up, and I'm so glad that the county was willing to support us and help us get that piece of equipment.
Now, Dr. Mosley, tell us a bit about that second helicopter. If I recall, there was hundreds of thousands of dollars that we saved versus buying a new helicopter and then outfitting it with the apparatuses that we need for mosquito control. How did we come about that opportunity, and really what does that mean for the county?
Well, first of all, it means great savings. And the communication between mosquito control programs in the state of Florida is great. And if we had to buy all the equipment that came with it, we probably were looking at $500,000 or $600,000 more.
Wow!
If we would have bought another helicopter and had to start from scratch. So it was a great opportunity. And like I said, we were very pleased that the county was behind us and saw this opportunity and took advantage of it.
Saving $500,000 for the taxpayers is always a good thing. Now, can you tell us just quickly, are there any differences between the two helicopters? Do they have any different capabilities between the two?
Well, they're very similar, just a matter of age. So either one could perform either task.
I think as far as safety and reliability go, you mentioned the age difference between those two helicopters. If you would kind of tell us some fun facts. I think the one behind us here is the oldest in the fleet of two now. But tell us a little bit about this helicopter's history and performance. And then if you don't mind, the second one, I think it's got probably some more upgrades than what this one has from a mechanical standpoint, at least from a total flying time is definitely less. But tell us a bit about that.
Well, this helicopter is a 1975 now, and as long as we keep it maintained, she should keep rolling for us. This helicopter is very capable of doing both larvicide and adulticiding. We also use it for survey missions when we're going out looking for those wet areas to find places that the trucks can't get to. So this helicopter has actually been invaluable to us, and so now it's going to get a little break with the other helicopter coming into fleet. So this is a helicopter that has seen a lot of hours, and we don't want to retire her yet.
Great point. It increases the longevity of both aircraft.
Precisely.
Too. Yeah.
Yes.
And Dr. Mosley, I know when I flew in that newer helicopter, it was interesting because we were talking about some of the parameters that you fly in, meaning how high off the ground you fly, what kind of speed, because you want to be most effective when you're spraying for the adult mosquitoes or the larvae. Can you talk a bit about what are those fun facts, if you will, of flying mosquito control helicopter?
Well, flying in a helicopter is an experience in its own. You actually fly a lot lower, and the maneuverability is a lot greater. I know we get calls sometimes from residents who are, excited to see the helicopter. Sometimes a little too excited. It's flying 200 or 300 feet above ground, but it gives us that extra advantage on spraying our mosquitoes. So it's we enjoy it because of its maneuverability, and I don't think we could get the same performance on a fixed wing.
Right.
So it can go over 100 miles an hour. We try not to, but there's times that we have to get from one place to another. So it goes pretty fast.
And that's efficient. We could appreciate that again when you look at flight time and manpower time. That's all really, really important when you talk about efficiency. One other thing I noticed when we were flying, looking down at the ground with the pilot that I was with, he was really able to interpret what he was seeing and kind of understand not only the topography, but the type of habitats that mosquitoes like to live in. And what a really interesting point was, different times of the year obviously negate some efforts, if you will, to control mosquitoes, while other times of year, maybe it's drier right now, but we still have wet areas in the county. So I guess when you look at the drier times of year, flying a helicopter, is that still a necessity, or is it only during wet season?
It's actually just as important now. Sometimes we have cases where we have to go out and do aerial treatment. The advantage of the helicopter in those instances is that he can see the ground much better. The visibility is much better in the helicopter than it is in the fixed wing. So yes, we still have wet places. And when we're in this dry period of the year, mosquitoes are still out and they're using other wetlands to reproduce. So they're there. And it's something that the helicopter is very good at finding. So that visibility is really important.
Absolutely. And one other thing I asked too, because I've been asked and I really don't know the best answer, we talk about the different types of sprays that we're using in these helicopters and spraying obviously for wet areas. What can we tell the residents when we talk about their concerns of water quality or impacts, if you will? We want to kill the mosquitoes, but we certainly don't want to have any issues with water quality, after we're spraying. So what can you tell us about that?
Well, I can say this much is that we use very small amounts of chemical. Mosquitoes are not very big, so it doesn't take a lot to kill them. So over time, the technology has, improved to the point that small droplet sizes can be the best treatment method. Our chemicals are registered and approved by EPA, so there's no fear of harming fish and other non-target species. Residents, they can go inside if they want or just take cover, but we don't try to spray people.
That's important.
It's safe. It is. The chemicals are safe. We wouldn't use anything that would be, a problem or dangerous to the citizens.
If you're a resident in Polk County, you might not be so lucky as to see the helicopter, but you might see the mosquito trucks that are always going around. So let's take a look at those trucks next. right, Dr. Mosley. So we've got 3 different types of truck here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this one that we're sat in front of right now?
Okay, so this is what we call our ULV truck. This is the most visible thing about mosquito control that seems to come to mind when anybody talks about mosquito control is a ULV truck. This is the one that goes out at night and it does the treatments around town. It's set up with a nice sprayer that can distribute only adulticide. So when this truck is out, it's going after adult mosquitoes only.
So you mentioned this is the most visible aspect of mosquito control for our residents. How do you determine when and where this truck is out in the field?
Oh, that's a great question. We actually have traps that tell us where the mosquitoes are most abundant. And then we make that decision on the number of mosquitoes in the trap, or if it's a species that's a public health threat. We make that decision based off that. So,
and so you're actually able to determine from the traps what kind of mosquitoes are out there and what kind of diseases they might be carrying?
Well, what potential they are as being a vector. We really can't tell by looking at the mosquito if they've been infected with the virus. So, we try to remove them so that we don't have that problem.
And how many of these trucks are in your fleet?
We have approximately 15 trucks that are ULV trucks.
What time of year would you say is most active?
Well, usually during the summer and fall, we're very busy. That's the rainy season. And then mosquitoes obviously take advantage of that because they need water. So they're we're busy a lot with trucks.
And that time of year is coming up. So if a resident out there notices that there's an abundance of mosquitoes in their area and they might be concerned, is there any way that they can get in touch with you and see about getting some traps set or some trucks coming out to their location?
Yeah, so what we do is we have our traps set. We have almost 80 traps in the county that we check every week. And that gives us the baseline of what the numbers are. We also, if someone calls in, which we encourage the residents to call us, or use the website to make a request and tell us what their concerns are, we can then go out and do inspections. And with the inspections, we can determine, what the next step is. So.
Right, and I remember seeing in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton, there were trucks going around sampling water. I assume that was part of residents reporting those large puddles of stagnant water. So very visible out in the community, collecting those samples and such.
Yeah, we do that anyway. But certainly, if we get a request from a citizen or one of the residents, we'll go there and do the same thing. So, but we have 5 technicians that are the baseline for that type of work, and they're out during the wet season doing that. But this truck can be active anytime because, in Florida, we don't get a break from mosquitoes. We get a tiny little period where there are not many, but, we could go out anytime. So
when you talk about mosquito control, it's not, we have different types of trucks, but also when we talk about how to treat for those mosquitoes, there's not one solution that addresses all types of mosquitoes or all breeds of mosquitoes, right?
Yeah, no, there isn't. And we have what we use this integrated approach called integrated mosquito management. And we have various tools. The helicopter is one of those tools. The trucks are a tool. Trapping is a tool. Inspection. We use lots of different tools to help us with our work as far as treating mosquitoes. And then we have some mosquitoes that we know exactly where to find them. They love to live around people, and so they're pretty easy to find.
All right, so if you're a resident and you're thinking, how can I control mosquitoes in my backyard? We'll talk about some other things later, but the county's here to help you as well. Dr. Mosley, tell us about this truck behind us and how it helps get those mosquitoes that may not be in the front yard.
This is an awesome piece of equipment. It actually is what we call a mister. It's an A1 mister, and it can send either adulticide or larvicide into the air 300 feet, and with the right trajectory, reach over a 2-story house and into a backyard. It's wonderful. And we also can use it in areas that the trucks can't get off-road to. We can drive close to those areas and take advantage of this piece of equipment's ability to send out the chemical.
So this spray is up into the air, but what's actually, what's the science behind and how we're applying this?
Well, we certainly take advantage of the wind. And we also have a motor that will also help send a turbine that will also push the chemical out.
So how precise is this? You mentioned it can reach over a house into a backyard. Are you able to, specifically target certain properties in like a block?
We can target a single property if we need to, or we can do the whole block.
Wow.
Yeah. So we can get a visual, certainly with a helicopter, and we know where to use this piece of equipment. So it's wonderful, and it's a big part of our management of mosquitoes.
What scenarios would you use this instead of a helicopter?
Well, if we are in a smaller area that would require a little more work, we don't like to take the helicopter out to treat a block or two. So we would use this to get in the back. Yeah.
And we can appreciate that efficiency because I think you're looking at the scale of what's really needed, and you're providing the correct equipment to address that at the scale that's required. So that's really good. And I know we talked before on the controls of this, that's all remotely operated from the cab, correct?
Yes, that's right. So the operator can remain in the cab and adjust the angle based on the wind and the need to and the obstacle that is trying to get past.
That's really amazing that you have this another tool in your integrated system.
Yes.
So everything's very specialized, and then the timers that people who are spraying, I imagine they're specialized as well.
Yes, every driver or every technician is licensed by the state of Florida and have the experience with working with chemicals and operating this equipment.
I know we've talked about kind of this broad front yard control. We talked about backyard control. Do we have an apparatus that does more of a spot treatment?
We actually, on our technician truck, we can take a look at some of that equipment because that will help you get an idea of what we do when we have smaller areas to treat and spot treatments.
That'd be great. Look forward to seeing that one as well.
Okay.
All right, let's take a look. We're here at the third type of truck, the tech truck. Dr. Mosley, why don't you tell us a little bit about what this truck does?
All right, so this is a one more technology involved truck versus the ULV truck. This is what our technicians that go out and do inspections drive every day. This truck has both larvicide and adulticide equipment, so they can actually treat the larvae while they're out as well as adults. And they also carry backpack sprayers, so if they need to get out and do around the home, they can do larviciding and adulticiding without starting on working. They have a special spray nozzle on the front of the truck that is used to spray ditches because, we get rain during the summertime, ditches fill up, and mosquitoes enjoy that habitat. This truck can go down blocks without having to stop and just continuously treat for the larvae.
Wow. That's really helpful for residents who might be experiencing sort of a neighborhood problem.
Yeah. This is a truck that will show up for inspection. So any resident that has had an inspection should have seen a truck like this pull up in front of their home, greeted by a super technician who knows what they're doing and provide the best service possible.
I know I was here before and we talked about a leaf blower, which I've used a leaf blower. My son has to blow off the driveway. But how are we actually using that to help in this mosquito issue?
Well, we actually turned that leaf blower into a system that can actually protect chemicals.
Gotcha. And with that one on the leaf blower, is that more so of an application for, if I have them in my home, or like what type of a situation are we using that leaf blower in?
Well, we would use that around the home. So if you're having a problem and there's, we go there, we set some traps, we find out you have a serious problem, then we can take that leaf blower backpack sprayer and go around the home and perform again adulticide and larvicide right there without having to get trucks involved to the point, because it's really difficult to get a truck in someone's yard.
Right.
So the backpack works great. We also have a hose and a hose reel that we can actually use the truck with. You have a special tank for that. And then we can actually pay the hose up to the house and your treatments come home there.
I want to talk a little bit more about the testing that you're watching.
what exactly are you looking for? Are you looking for a certain number of mosquitoes, or are you looking for a certain range of mosquitoes? When the technicians come out and they're looking in the room, they're testing, what are they looking? Okay, so when they're doing their inspections, they're actually inspecting for whatever is there. So sometimes we don't have expectations. We want to go in and find out what's there. We may look at a resident's property and say this could be a good spot for this species or that species, but we let the traps tell us the truth. And we also do the inspection. So we look for larvae in containers. We encourage people to make sure they don't have containers around their homes that are holding water. So all that is explained to the residents when we're doing the inspections, but we look for those things. And we also show them, what we found sometimes. It's amazing that people can, have an opportunity to look at what a mosquito larvae look like, because some people really don't know.
Yeah. And when should a resident get in touch?
Anytime they experience mosquito bites that are annoyance to them. I know everybody has different tolerance levels. In Florida, there's no way to avoid it.
Right.
So I think we need to sign a document saying we are going to have some mosquitoes. However, there are times that it's really bad, and we do respect what people are feeling, and we'll take care of it. We will not terminate a call with saying, well, you need to come better with a little more information.
Right.
No, if they call, we will take care of it.
Obviously, Polk County is large when we talk about the size of our landmass. Talked about the helicopter, talked about these ways of getting control in certain places. But when we talk about the traps and these inspections that we're doing, how many traps at one time are set throughout the county?
Yeah, so we set a total of, it's a really difficult number because we have our standard number, which is close to 80, but we also set out special traps. For example, last year we set out almost 300 special traps in addition to what we normally produce every week. So there's a lot of trapping that goes on. So we have a lot of good technicians, and they're always eager to try to find out what the answer is and help the resident, and let's get to the bottom of the problem and what species we're dealing with. So I guess if that answers your question, we have a lot of traps.
Well, and I think too, when we talk about the traps, what's the real importance? I mean, traps tell you, a quantity, but what's really important about the type of mosquitoes that we are seeing in those traps? What kind of information can we ascertain from that?
Yeah, so that's great. That's a great point. When we look at the traps, we look at what species we're collecting, and if we see a potential vector species, we then make sure we go out and inspect that area. We do look at that. That's really important. So if we're seeing a lot of a vector that may transmit West Nile, we need to make sure that we protect the residents in those areas. So,
and those mosquitoes that we trap, are we bringing some of those back to the lab, or what are we doing with those?
We bring them all back to the lab. I'm selfish. I want every mosquito to make it back to the lab so that we can look at it under a scope and identify it and identify it to species. We have the staff is all trained for local species mosquitoes, so they're very good at that and very dependable. So we have a lab that accommodates 9 or 10 ID people.
Gotcha.
Well, hearing about the lab is very exciting. I think it's time that we go take a look.
I think we go to the lab.
All right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Let's go. Okay, Dr. Mosley, we were talking a little bit about the traps that you guys use, and they don't look much like this anymore. Tell us about what we're looking at.
Okay, so what you were just talking about, that is a New Jersey light trap. And it was in use back in 1927, and for much of about 50 years of use before a new style of trap took its place. The trap that's now commonly used, and one that we use the most, is right to your left there. That is the CDC light trap, and it uses dry ice as an attractant. So mosquitoes are always seeking carbon dioxide.
Right.
So when we breathe, we're telling mosquitoes, here I am, come get your blood meal. However, if we're using the trap, that's actually something that we bring them in, and then the fan on the trap will suck them in, and we can bring them home.
Okay, so does it keep the mosquitoes alive, or does it? How does that work?
It keeps them alive. So
Yeah.
when we collect them, they're all alive. We have to be very careful when we take the net off so we don't lose any mosquitoes. but they are alive. The difference between the CDC light trap and the New Jersey light trap is that trap was created with an incandescent bulb, and a light was the attractant, which can be great, but you attract every other insect. So there's a lot of non-target species getting caught in those things, and it would be a nightmare IDing mosquitoes when their scales are intermixed with moths and beetles and other insects. So this trap is very quiet. It can actually be placed anywhere. It runs by battery. This has to be plugged in to an outlet.
Okay.
So it only goes as far as electricity allows.
Right.
And that's another limitation.
Wow. And that's almost surprising how simple this mechanism is, and how inconspicuous it is, but it lets you do some really advanced work.
Yes, it does. It's a very, very good trap, and we collect a lot of mosquitoes. We've taken over 1 million mosquitoes out of the environment with just our traps alone. So,
wow. Tell us a little bit about this trap here.
This is our BG Sentinel trap. This trap really became popular during the Zika time, when Zika was really an issue. This trap is specially designed to attract the vectors of dengue. Zika and dengue. And so it has this black top, which stands out, which is also something that those particular mosquitoes are attracted to. And with this white top, it gives the mosquito that visual of a possible place to lay eggs. And so when the mosquito is attracted to this trap, they actually have a lure, which there. Okay. This is a lure that smells like human skin. And I don't know if you want to smell that, but it's actually pretty sweet.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Smells like sweaty skin.
Yeah. And mosquitoes love that. So with the trap, when the fan is on, trap remains open. It sucks the mosquitoes in, and they're stuck there.
Wow.
If the battery dies, the trap will just politely close. So.
Well, that's incredibly interesting, because we see this progression. We're attracting mosquitoes using light, and then we're using the dry ice, and then finally we're using color and smell.
Yes.
So we're really, utilizing every sense that they have to target them and to sort of advance this technology.
Understanding their behavior is really important, and that's what these traps do. They take advantage of that instinct that mosquitoes have.
Yeah. Well, next up, we're going to take a look at what happens to the mosquitoes once they're out of the traps and in the lab, where we can take a look at them. And let's go ahead and get to the lab.
What happened? You guys get trapped?
I did. Okay, we're here in the entomology lab. We're going to talk about what happens to the mosquitoes once they get out of the traps and under the microscope. Dr. Mosley, what are we looking at?
What we're looking at is the identification microscope, and this is a big part of our lab. Remember, IDing mosquitoes is really important, so we have a well-trained team and very talented with IDing mosquitoes.
And what can you learn when you identify a mosquito? What information does that give you?
That tells us sometimes where they're coming from. If they're coming from a swamp nearby, are they coming from the home around the resident's home, or are they coming out of ditches? A lot tells us about a mosquito. We can learn a lot about a mosquito when we ID them.
And then how does that information and the work that you do in this very room help you to go out and combat those mosquitoes?
Well, at the end of the day, at the end of the ID session, we then look at the numbers, and we then make a decision on where we need to go and treat and what methods we need to take to treat. And it tells us quite a bit. So it's very important, big part of our day. Without our surveillance team, we wouldn't know where to go, and we just can't ride around treating where we think they are. So
right.
Very important.
And how often are you changing your methods and your tactics based on the information that you gather here in the lab? Are you going out and changing things every day, making adjustments every day, or is this a weekly sort of operation?
Well, it can be daily, because we have traps that the numbers or the type of mosquito will tell us different things. Mm-hmm. So we're able to work on multiple problems that way. So it's a daily thing. Yeah.
Well, Dr. Mills, I know we spoke about before, we talk about the types of chemicals that are used to treat the mosquito population. Are we kind of settling on one particular chemical and just using that for the next several years? Or can you explain to us, if not, what the alternates are and why?
Okay, if something is working and you continue to use it, sooner probably than later, mosquitoes, like any other organism, can build up resistance. So we rotate chemicals to make sure that the mosquitoes don't become accustomed and build up resistance to that particular chemical.
So I guess that's kind of important when residents see a mosquito control truck come by or a helicopter fly over. They may see it happen multiple times, because I know we talked about before, we have adult and we have larvae, but we have kind of multiple fronts that we're having to combat. So one treatment doesn't mean that you'll be mosquito free as a resident would expect. Is that correct?
Unfortunately, that is the case, because mosquitoes are pretty low on the food chain. So they survive by having lots and lots of offspring, lots of young, more than any predator or mosquito control program could take care of. So it is a challenge.
Tell us about this. What is in here?
This is one trap that was collected. Commissioner Scott, you know how many mosquitoes might be in this trap?
I guess 5,000.
Okay, pretty close, but actually 41,000 mosquitoes were counted in this one trap.
Wow.
And that's one trap?
One trap,
running
yes.
For how long?
Oh, just one night, 20 hours. Particularly after hurricanes, we see more.
That's a lot of swats. If you got to swat the
If
dog,
it-
you get tired out, I guess, huh?
If you're out there in this, you're going to really do some swatting.
I get 2 bites. I'm thinking there's
Yeah.
a lot out there.
So that's what makes it really important during hurricanes, after post-hurricane, is to get out and get treating and get to work right away, because our work begins as soon as that, a week or so after the waters settle. Hurricanes they will be disruptive, but mosquitoes recover quickly and then start to produce in massive numbers.
I know outside we talked about, I heard the term vector
Yes.
quite often. Now we're in the lab, and I think it's an appropriate time. Can you explain to our residents out there that don't know what a vector is? I mean, what is it, and what is it really? How is it meaningful to?
Well, for us, a vector is a mosquito that is capable of transmitting a pathogen. And a pathogen is an organism that can cause disease. So the mosquitoes don't actually cause a disease, they actually transmit the pathogen. And in most cases, there's no benefit to the mosquito when it's infected with a pathogen, but they're an unwitting ally, I guess.
And there is no way really for a resident to visually look at a mosquito and say vector, non-vector. Is that correct?
There are some species that are really good vectors. For example, Aedes aegypti, Aedes albopictus are 2 common mosquitoes that we find around our homes. And you can recognize them just by their behavior, but we can't tell if they've been infected with the virus, but they are vectors, yes.
Okay. So we'll have to put some photos up to our residents so they can kind of play a memory game.
And that's why it's really important. We always emphasize about containers around the home, is because those 2 species take advantage of that. And they've learned to live with people. Like any other species that wants to be successful, live with people and you'll be okay. We don't want that to happen, though.
Right.
And Aedes aegypti and albopictus take advantage of tires, containers, bromeliads, anything that holds water is a great place for them to lay eggs and have offspring.
Well, since we're on the subject, I think it's important that our residents get a good idea of what they can do to prevent mosquitoes from popping up in their home and around their areas. And you mentioned, of course, getting rid of anything that might, be holding standing water, especially checking after storms. What are some of the things that residents can do?
Rain gutters are often overlooked, and sometimes they get clogged and they hold water, and they become great places for mosquitoes to use for laying eggs. And then, you can have a problem right above your head and not know it. So when we do inspections, we always look for things like that. Look for leaky faucets or hoses that could be puddling around your house. And report anything like ditches that are in front of your home that's full of water. Report it to our office, and we will go out, we will look for larvae, and more often than not, we would probably pre-treat to prevent anything from getting in there. And we even would put fish in there. We have mosquito fish, and we would use those as well. So
That's interesting.
yeah.
So using nature to sort of balance nature.
Have biocontrol, yes.
Time periods after hurricanes, and you have all this excess water that's standing around. What are some things that residents can do in times like that when, resources might be strained and there might be water in places where there normally isn't water?
Again, if you have water and you have flooding, it's better to report it and look for resources to help remove that water, whether it's draining it, or call us and we can come out and inspect for mosquitoes. Yeah, and we'll pre-treat those areas to prevent mosquitoes from using those areas, because if it stays stagnant long enough, you're probably going to get mosquitoes to visit.
But also bacteria.
Yeah, but mosquitoes will be your worst,
Right.
Your worst problem.
I think that speaks to, with all the divisions, how they work together within the county. Roads and drainage
Yes.
works feverishly to keep those culvert pipes unclogged and everything clear and cleaned out ditches periodically throughout the year. But the fact, like you're saying, if we get stagnant water, just because it can't flow due to a blockage somewhere downstream, that's just detrimental when we look at the human side of the equation.
Yeah.
We're having a mosquito increase in population and breeding ability. So
Yes.
those are all great points, and I would just encourage the residents to really know, do their part. As you said, empty those pots, empty the tires. We talked about that before, where you get a lot of tires in a certain area. Those are all going to store water, and over time, that's a prime mosquito breeding ground.
Yes, it is.
Well, I greatly appreciate the time here. I think we've had fun. I didn't get trapped. You guys did. But Dr. Mosley, thank you very much.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Commissioner's Report. It was a great pleasure to walk around mosquito control and explore the methods, the gear, and the equipment used to combat mosquitoes in Polk County. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.